Have you ever planned a home improvement project, like adding a patio or decorating a room, and the costs seem to increase on a daily basis? Don't feel bad, it's not that unusual. The good news is there are some cost control methods you can use. But first, there is a fundamental principle of project management that you need to grasp. This principle, called the triple constraint, explains the relationship between cost, schedule, and scope. Newer models add quality as well, particularly for highly technical projects. The triple constraint shows that you cannot manage cost independently, but rather must manage cost as it relates to the schedule and scope of the project. So, how do you do that? First, you develop a schedule for the scope of the project. Then, you relate the project costs to the schedule by developing a time-phased budget, which allocates the budget to the specific work scheduled. Budgeting costs to the schedule allows you to relate costs to work performed. For example, on your patio project, you've scheduled 2 days for the contractor to level and compact the ground. Now, you allocate the estimated cost for that work to that scheduled activity. When the contractor is finished, you can then relate the actual costs to the work performed for that part of the project. There are several cost control systems or approaches that can be used on projects, such as earned value management, forecasting, and a to-complete performance index. The selection of which method to use on any particular project will be based on the project complexity and the requirements of the project customer or sponsor. Let's investigate these approaches. The best project management system to use for cost control is Earned Value Management, EVM, which helps identify project variances between the value of work planned and the value of work performed. For EVM to work, your project must have a resource-loaded schedule, meaning the project must be time-phased with the scheduled work. A resource-loaded schedule allows you to calculate the value of work scheduled compared to the budgeted cost of work performed. At the same time, you can use your accounting system to get a value for the actual cost of work performed. Once you have values for the work scheduled, the budgeted cost of work performed, and the actual costs, you can calculate a Scheduled Performance Index, SPI, which measures and compares the actual progress to the planned progress, and a Cost Performance Index, CPI, which measures and compares the actual costs to the planned costs. Interpretation of these two indices is straightforward and easy. A positive value is good and a negative value is bad. So, for CPI, a positive value says that you underspent for the work you've completed, while a negative value says you have overspent your budget for the work performed. Using the EVM for your patio project, it would be easy to see if you have spent 75% of your budget, but have only completed 50% of the actual work. This lets you know that if you want to finish on budget, you need to take action to reduce the cost of the remaining 50% of the work. Another method of controlling project costs is forecasting, which is the process of using data on the current project status to predict future project performance. Again, you first need to have the budget planned in a time-phased manner, although it may not be a fully resource-loaded schedule. The forecast will then be fairly simple to calculate. Simply take your actual cost of work performed, ACWP, the actual cost to date, and add it to the budgeted estimated cost of the remaining work, known as the estimate to completion, ETC. The resulting value, ACWP plus ETC, is the estimate at completion, EAC. For a quick EAC calculation, you would use the original cost estimate for performing the remaining work. However, to get a more accurate EAC, you will want to perform a new cost estimate for the remaining work, particularly if the price of resources has changed since the original estimate. Performing a new estimate for the remaining work is termed a bottom-up estimate to completion. So, if your EVM values for your patio project are 75% of budget spent and only 50% of the planned work completed, you would want to perform a bottom-up estimate to completion to get a real understanding of how much trouble you may be in with your project. When your CPI is negative and your forecasted EAC is over your project budget, you will need to use a cost control tool that will quickly measure what cost performance is required to finish the project on budget. The To-Complete Performance Index, TCPI, is a calculation of the cost performance index that must be achieved on the value of the rest of the project in order to complete the project within budget. Knowing the To-Complete Performance Index makes it easy to determine a project's status. If the current CPI is greater than the 2 Complete Performance Index, you're good. If not, you have more work to do. Using Earned Value Management with forecasting and a 2 Complete Performance Index will give you the tools you need to control the costs on your project, large or small. Project cost is one side of the triple constraint triangle that explains the relationship between a project scope, schedule, and cost. Cost performance can have a positive or negative impact on the project scope and/or project schedule, and therefore overall project success. As such, it's important to utilize cost control tools for your project. Earned Value Management, EVM, helps identify project variances between the value of work planned and the value of work performed. For EVM to work, your project must have a resource-loaded schedule, meaning the project must be time-phased with the scheduled work. EVM uses planned work, the budgeted cost of work performed, and the actual cost of work performed to calculate a Scheduled Performance Index, SPI, and a Cost Performance Index, CPI, to monitor and control project performance. These two indices are easily interpreted. A positive value is good and a negative value is bad. Forecasting helps determine an estimated final cost of the project by using the actual cost of work performed, ACWP, to date, and the budgeted cost for the remaining work, known as Estimate to Completion, ETC. The total of these two values is the Estimate at Completion, EAC, for the project, which can be compared to the original budgeted cost of the project. The 2 Complete Performance Index, TCPI, is the same as the CPI, but adjusted for performance to date. Therefore, it is an estimated CPI value that must be met in order to complete the project on budget.